Hello and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to share with you 10 Ark creatures that you really need to have. So let's get straight into it. In at number 10 is the Snow Owl, and since this thing released on the map that is Ark Fjorda, this is extremely accessible to every player, and I really do urge you to tame a Snow Owl if you do have access to one. I'm pretty sure Switch players and mobile players still do not have access to this, but there is hope for you Switch players out there as maps are actually coming to Fjorda now. For mobile players though, you'll probably never see this creature on your phone screens. Either way, the Snow Owl is a creature which was originally found on extinction, and it does have a wealth of great abilities. Firstly, its dive ability, which it shares with the Griffin, except it seems to be much more nicely coded for the Snow Owl than with the Griffin, as it just feels so much smoother and fluid. And with this ability, you can zip across the map with absolute ease. It also does have the heat-seeking ability, which is great for any PvP scenario, as you can quickly see if anyone is trying to raid your base, or if someone has raided your base, for example, you can find them and dispose of them as you wish, which is a really useful feature to have, and definitely one great for PvP. You also want to level up that stamina, not just so you can fly longer distances because it's a flyer, because this thing can heal for longer periods of time if it has a higher stamina stat, and you will definitely be using that healing ability. Just do take into mind that it will heal everything in its healing radius, not just your tamed creatures. And also, if you have gachas as well, Snow Owl pellets are the key to getting all of the insane loot out of them. So definitely, if you can, tame yourself a Snow Owl. In my opinion, they are an essential Ark Dino. In at number 9 is the RG, keeping on with that flyer theme, of course. And the RG is definitely an essential tame, which can be found on maps like the island, literally the most accessible map. And I think every single version of Ark does have the Argentavis in it, and what an insane creature this is, and what a great creature for productivity the Argentavis is. In terms of its main abilities, this thing is used widely for gathering all of that metal up, and a lot of it can, as it has an extremely high weight stat, and it has weight reduction for things like metal, crystal, and obsidian too, which is really just a really nice bonus. Also, on top of that, it can pick up a wealth of creatures as well, which is great for taming too. Who doesn't like a creature where you can pick up a smaller creature which you're trying to tame, for example, the Anky, and then you can either kill it, for example, or you could just put it into a taming pen and then tame yourself this new cool dinosaur. With the RG, you can definitely make taming significantly more efficient, and the abilities don't stop there. Its saddle also acts as a portable smithy, and if it eats a dead carcass of an Ark creature, this thing will regen faster than any other creature can compete with. In at number 8 is the Baryonyx, and what an absolutely insane creature this is, and this is by far one of my favourite carnivores in Ark, even though since other creatures have been released, the Baryonyx has somewhat taken a back seat, especially with creatures like the Shadowman being introduced, as they do have a lot more uses than the Baryonyx, but I still think the Baryonyx is an essential creature every Ark player should have in their roster. Essentially, the Baryonyx is by far the best creature for doing any kind of cave runs in the Ark universe. Yes, the Shadowman again will be a great creature for the job, but I always find myself using the Baryonyx, and I urge you to use a Baryonyx as well. And the fact that they spawn on the island makes this accessible to every Ark player that wants to do cave runs, even though on mobile it is a very different system to what you will find on Switch, consoles, and PC. But why would you want to tame the Baryonyx apart from its amazing use in caves? And what is its use as a general creature as well? And to that, I would say the Baryonyx is a really great travel mount, with a significant amount of speed and a very high stamina stat with minimal stamina drain. And in the water, this creature works great as well, and it has a little secret ability hidden up its sleeve. If you press C on your keyboard when in the water, this won't work outside of water, it will do a spin attack, which will stun creatures up to the size of a megalodon. And I know I'm coming back to the caves again, this makes this creature really, really great for those underwater caves. But sadly, unlike the Basilosaurus, this thing isn't immune to all of those electric eels and jellyfish. And next up is the Rex. Now, to many, I seem like to most people that I give the Rex a bad rep, and many will probably think I hate the Rex in some way, but I still think the Rex is a very essential creature, and I do use it on a daily basis. Yes, there are loads of other carnivores which I may prefer using, but the Rex is just so good at its job, which is general combat, that you really can't discount it, and it is by far one of Ark's best creatures, even though I do seem to kind of give it a bit of a negative rep. And yes, it is quite a basic creature overall, and I would say it's an overrated Ark Dino, but it is still one which I think every Ark player should tame at one point. And also, it is just a very, very well-known tame too, so you'll probably have your eyes on this thing right from the beginning. And I remember being absolutely hyped to get my first Rex all the way back in 2015 when I tamed my first Rex on Ark. Definitely an insane moment I will never forget. And yes, like I said, the Rex is by far the most balanced carnivore out there, with a great health stat allowing you to manage through really, really long boss fights, a great melee damage stat allowing the Rex to deal the damage required, and they do definitely lack in weight, speed, stamina, and general agility, but all of their combat skills really make up for this. I do give the Rex a bad rep, but I do urge you to tame one if you get the chance. Now we have the Basilosaurus, the first water creature on the list, and one I hinted to earlier, and you will by now know some of the abilities it has. This thing is immune to electric eels and jellyfish, and barely any creatures are. But the Basilosaurus, which is joining Ark with ASA's release, is actually going to be immune to these things, and you can check the wiki fandom for that creature and you will see that it is immune to all of those things. And having that sense of security when you are in the ocean is an absolutely insane thing to have, as those creatures are by far some of the biggest pests you will find in the ocean. But apart from that great ability, which I spent ages ranting on, these things are by far the best underwater creature for general travel and cave runs. They're also pretty good for gathering undersea loot as well, even though you may argue the Dipleurodon is better than the Basilosaurus, and I would say that, but the Dipleurodon really is not worth the tame, considering you only have it for half an hour and then it will disappear. The Basilosaurus, although not the best in combat, is a very, very useful, essential ocean dino. In at number 5 is the Bufo. Now, how could I forget about this Ark creature? And actually, earlier on in my Ark top 10s, I gave the Bufo a really, really bad rep. But now that I've used one and fully gotten to terms with it, I really, really like the Bufo. Mainly, obviously, because this thing is an absolute legend at gathering cementing paste. And if you haven't played Ark, you will not get the significance of that resource. And oh boy, what an essential resource cementing paste is. Yes, you can always get it for beaver dams, but with the Bufo, you have a much more reliable source of that cementing paste. Whereas with beaver dams, sometimes there may not be any beaver dams. And considering Ark is a buggy game, sometimes your map just won't have beaver dam spawns for whatever reason. And recently, I've definitely been struggling to find those beaver dams. And also, just there may not be beaver dams at the time, as the beavers do need to actually build those dams. Whereas with the Bufo, you can simply just kill some insects, especially in the insect cave, and then just get loads and loads of consistent, easy, reliable cementing paste. And as long as there are insects on the map, you have yourself a great little buddy frog for all of those cementing paste needs. Now for our first Gen 2 creature, being the Shadowman. and what a creature the Shadowman is. And yes, I did talk about it earlier. The Shadowman is a pretty good creature for doing cave runs, and if you do have one instead of a Baryonyx, it is not a bad shout, especially for underwater caves too, as it does have that hydration buff which it shares with the Spino, which will give it even more of a damage buff. And obviously you wouldn't be taking packs into caves, but it does have a pack buff too, which is just really great for any Ark creature to have, and it is just great to have a pack creature, as it makes the Shadowman one of Ark's best boss creatures. And I should have talked about that with the Rex earlier. Boss creatures are definitely an essential part of Ark, as bosses are an essential part of Ark, and you'll be doing bosses throughout your Ark journey, and what a boss killer the Shadowman is. But on top of all of that, the Shadowman is a great versatile travel creature, being able to swim through water with ease, jump to great heights, and just overall having really great agility. In at number 3 is the Deinonychus. Now some people may say that this is sacrilegious, putting this above the Shadowman, but in my opinion I do prefer the Deinonychus from the Shadowman, mainly because it has one ability which is insanely OP for bosses, and it is by far the easier tame compared to the Shadowman. Essentially, the Shadowman is a long taming process, which you'll definitely struggle with and have failed attempts when you want to feed it raw fish while it's asleep in fish baskets, of course, and if it awakes, then pretty much your whole tame is ruined. Whereas the Deinonychus is pretty similar to the Wyvern. You just find a Deinonychus nest in the chalk cliffs, and then you just take that egg and raise it, and you can even use torches, as it isn't like a rock drake egg where you need air conditioners to actually get that temperature right. And once you do have that egg incubated and fully raised up, you have yourself a beast of a creature, which also, again like the Shadowman, does share that pack buff. And it also has an immense amount of bleed ability, which the Shadowman simply doesn't have. And the fact is, it can latch onto larger creatures, especially creatures like bosses, and deal that bleed damage in a boss arena, which is absolutely insane, and to my knowledge, pretty much no other creature has that ability. And again, like the Shadowman, I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot here, the Deinonychus has great mobility, being able to scale walls and cliffs with absolute ease, just simply jumping to them like an absolute parkour god. In at number 2 is the Anky. Now this may be very unexpected to you, but I'm going to tell you why I've actually put this thing in the number 2 spot. If you played Ark, you know how absolutely vital metal is to your Ark progress. It is an essential resource. Some may say it's not essential, but I would say it is definitely essential. You need it for tools, you need it for weapons, you need it for armor, you just need it for so many things. You even need it for saddles, and for most saddles for most Ark creatures which you'll be riding on. Metal is definitely an essential resource, and the Anky is going to gather all of that for you with the greatest amount of speed and skill. Yes, you could always use a metal pick, but the Anky is the absolute step up from that, and you will 100% see the difference when you get an Anky to harvest up all of your metal. And especially considering the RG can pick the Anky up and just hover it over metal and it will automatically harvest that metal. And I'm pretty sure it has weight reduction on metal as well. But either way, you can always just chuck that into the RG if the Anky doesn't have weight reduction. But I'm pretty confident that it does. Also, you could always put the Doedicurus here as well if you think stone and wood is a really important resource, which it definitely is, so I think those two are interchangeable in this spot. But before we get into number 1, an honourable mention is the Angler. These are a great creature for gathering all kinds of silica pearls, and definitely a creature at some point that you should look out for. You may doubt it, but at some point, tame yourself an Angler. You may be surprised with their gathering abilities. And in at number 1 is the Mwing. Now, I definitely have a lot of bias here. I've used the Mwing so much, and I really love the Mwing in all things. And traveling is an essential part of any Ark player's journey, and also raising and breeding creatures is an essential part of any Ark player's journey to actually get that maximum success and to defeat all of those bosses. Firstly, obviously, I'm going to talk about its traveling abilities. And yes, it may not be the most effective on all maps, but I think compared to the Rock Drake, this thing can actually do significantly better on some flatter surfaces. Although it does do a lot better with some elevation. Except it can't really go up surfaces as much, but it is by far the fastest travel mount in Ark by far. And in terms of its breeding abilities, this thing isn't going to do the breeding, but once the creature that you are breeding and has hatched or has been birthed, has actually been born into the world, this thing acts as a portable feeding trough, with its milk coming out of its sides and then obviously feeding all of those baby creatures. It can also steal baby creatures, which are enemy baby creatures on PvP. And if you wanted berries too, this is a great berry gatherer. Definitely one to tame. But anyway, that was the end of today's video. And did you agree with this list? Also, I would like to know your top 10 creatures which you use so much in Ark and you need. But with that, I'll see you all later.